Welcome to the AZ Political Podcast. I'm Jim Sharpe, and our headlines this week. Headline number one, when asked by Nick Saletti of our TV partners at ABC 15 if she plans to work with President-elect Donald Trump on border security, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs said she will, quote, work with anyone to help secure the border. But when Nick asked whether convicted criminals who are undocumented immigrants should be deported, Hobbs said she didn't want to respond to hypothetical scenarios, although she said she believes most people would get behind that idea. So we're kind of wondering if she will too, maybe at some point or another. Headline number two, if you think no one's running for political office in 2025 and maybe even a little relieved by that idea after what we saw in 2024, well, think again, ballot breath, because although it's not likely an election you'll be voting in, elections for state party chairpersons will be held. And while I don't have time to sort through all the Democrats, it looks like Arizona Republican Party Chairwoman Gina Swoboda will keep her job, especially after Donald Trump endorsed her at that Turning Point USA America Fest thing that was held a couple weeks ago. And headline number three, the 119th Congress begins this week with Republicans in full control of the House and Senate for the first time in 6 years. Arizona will have a new senator, Democrat Ruben Gallego, and Arizona will see two new members of the House sworn in, Democrat Yasmin Ansari, who was our guest here a couple of weeks ago, representing Gallego's old congressional district, and Republican Abe Hamadeh, who takes over for Debbie Lesko in Arizona's 8th congressional district. Which brings me to my guest on the AZ Political Podcast, an old member of the Arizona congressional delegation, Representative David Schweikert. Now, I don't mean that by age.
Trust me. Someone was showing me the picture of the day I got elected. My hair was much less white.
Okay. I was talking about time in office.
Yeah.
Are you currently the longest running member of Arizona's delegation?
No. Raul is, but this will be, as he says, his last term.
Raul, okay. Huh?
And Gosar is identical to me, but it looks like, through this, at least in the Republican side, because I had served as county treasurer before. So
Okay. All right. So once again, not old.
Yeah.
Just long time in office, that's all. When I proposed the idea of having Congressman Schweikert on the AZ Political Podcast again, he said he would love to, especially if you could talk about all the bad predictions made about the 2024 election. I'm assuming you're mostly speaking about your own reelection.
No, actually, in some ways, it was more the lack of understanding of what was going on in society, the environment across the country, particularly our community, which has had some of the highest inflation in America, and how many people were stressed out of their minds. And this is, what the hell? A little bit of I told you so.
Okay.
I get, as my wife explains, I'm so rarely right, having a moment or so. But I think last summer we did this, and I actually shared with you a couple of things we were seeing in the polling we have done. And we do really good polling. It turns out we're actually very good at math. And then I saw this cadre of political consultants and others come on because I actually watch you.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Which demonstrates I really need to get a life.
I think we're up to 20 viewers now. Yeah, okay.
Oh, God, I know that feeling. And I kept hearing things that say, but that makes no sense. And this, for some reason, enrages much of the media community, the political consultant community. Politics is math. It's data.
Yeah.
It's
and
populations.
let's be honest, you love math and data.
Look, I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah. Okay, love versus comfortable. Okay.
Yeah. Look, I'd rather hang out with a spreadsheet than many of the people I have to work with. It's just true. But think about folks that sat in this chair and prediction after prediction after prediction. And I think actually in some ways, how often are those predictions actually not based in any actual fact, but are meant to be manipulative? Well, they're about raising money. They're about, telling stories that people talk their book instead of often tell the truth.
Right. Now, there has been definitely a shift in your congressional district through the years.
Oh, yeah.
There's a much higher Democratic...
but redistricting did that.
Right. So, but it has also, since redistricting, you can see there's definitely a trend more to the left. And this is a trend we've seen with a lot of educated urban voters,
Yeah.
they tend to lean a little more left.
There was up till this election cycle.
Okay.
And that's the real story. And if you read some of the folks that are doing data analysis, not the political people who are spinning why they raised bunches of money from people and then wasted it, you're actually seeing, and oddly enough, I got this from Senator Sinema. We sat on a flight about a month ago together, and she says, look, for the Democrat Party, marriage equality, abortion were their lightning rods. That's how they motivated people. That's how they set off emotions. That's how they raised money. But those are now, in Arizona, it's now, one's in the Constitution, one's decided by the Supreme Court. What does the left use to enrage their base and get people to open up their checkbooks? And for a lot of that well-educated folks who don't see themselves necessarily as partisans, they're just trying to economically prosper, survive. We can now see in this election, so the facts are the facts. You had upper middle-class neighborhoods, which had been moving left for the last decade, all of a sudden now snap back. And some of that snapback we saw in our numbers is they make great incomes and they were stressed out of their mind because everything was more expensive. Getting the kids to school, how they're going to fund their retirement, all the things we go through. And now take people who are in an apartment or who are still struggling. Look at the increase in homelessness.
Yeah.
I mean, in some of this, it's less political spin. There's actual real suffering in our community. And the lack of willingness to address that, much of this was caused the day President Biden took office till today. If you don't make about 27% more, you're actually poor.
Yeah.
And the left...
I don't, by the way. And I'm not even close to contract negotiations.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, we saw it and we couldn't figure out what the Democrats were doing. You know, okay, you're going to run several $1 million beating me up on abortion. Great. God bless you. Turns out voters already know where their heads are at in that.
Right.
And the fact that they were going to get to vote on a constitutional initiative, the candidates were no longer the proxy.
Right.
So, you know, it was an interesting election from the standpoint, if you took a breath and actually read, you saw this coming 6 months out. Our conversation will prove that.
Okay.
And yet, how many people you brought in made crap up? So that's all I wanted to share.
Yeah. Well, it really, a lot of it is in knowing the right questions to ask and getting your sample correct. Which,
I'm a little more cynical because first off, we sort of rules like we spend a lot of money on polling. And so does every other candidate and every other group. You don't spend a bunch of money and then give it away. So when you see people often here moving their mouth, they're often spinning because they need to tell a story because the next meeting they have, they're asking someone for money or they're asking some group for money. Never underestimate the manipulation that goes into the true story of what a community cares about, because that may not be the story you're telling the people you're fundraising from.
But do you believe that narrative is what helped Trump and the Republicans take control? I mean, that narrative played across the country and across all neighborhoods in Arizona. Yes, there were some blue areas that just absolutely remained blue. I'm thinking of Representative-elect Yasmin Ansari's district.
But even in her district, look at some of the neighborhoods that are a little more middle class. We saw even in areas like that, heavily Democrat districts, and Hispanic males particularly that were moving up into true middle class were actually breaking much more Republican.
Yeah.
And that becomes a fascinating thing because we've had 25 years of folklore that if you're a minority, the Democrats own you.
Right.
And it turns out economics in many ways is the driving, no matter what population you're part of, prosperity is moral, it's aspirational, And we saw all sorts of groups that in the past the Democrats thought they owned, breaking, saying, I now care about taxes. I now care about prosperity. I also care about my kids. And, we were teasing about me being old, but my wife and I are both exactly the same age, and we have a 2.5-year-old and a 9-year-old.
Right.
So we're older parents. And we could even see when hanging out with parents who are much younger, a lot of the messaging coming from the Democrats was so extreme. Even these were very moderate type families we see at soccer practice. They were creeped out by a lot of the Democrat messaging.
Oh, it also didn't help, giving $1 million to Oprah to do an interview.
People are realizing how exploitive. When you reach over and the things you see on your phone, this is for everyone. And you already know this because you're in the media, but anyone that's out there, be prepared for a bunch of the stuff you see to be fake. There's some great stories that have been breaking recently how much the influencer community, these people are actually paid.
Oh, yeah.
They're for sale. There's actually now very quiet marketing firms you contact, and they will find you a bunch of populists or conservatives or leftists, and they'll actually advocate something for you.
Yeah.
It's a marketing scheme.
Yeah.
And people think that these are real thought leaders. They're not. They're for sale.
And it's more than about beauty products and clothes.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
about
Now we now see it in
politics.
politics.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so there's a look back at and a little "I told you so" and a mini victory lap for.
Well, but I thought I put it in context, so it wasn't too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Arrogant.
No, I agreed. I said yes. Let's do this. So
all right,
absolutely.
now let's get on to the fun stuff that start tomorrow.
Right. So let's talk about what the future holds. 2025, 2026. What issues? And you know what? I'll bring this up first because this is one of the things I wanted to talk about that we talked about last time. Is that you unabashedly ran as somebody who was saying, yeah, we've got to tinker with Social Security. Yeah, we got to mess with Medicare because if we don't, those things are going away. And you did so, I thought, I'm just going to say this, in a pretty, brave way. Like you're like, I feel like my constituents are intelligent enough to know what I'm saying is the truth and I don't have to sugarcoat it for them. And you weren't worried that anybody was going to go, David Schweikert wants to kill Social Security, so.
Well, I wouldn't use that last sentence. Look, the Democrats actually spent, I think, a couple million on that message saying, how dare David Schweikert talk about trying to save Medicare or save Social Security. I mean, they beat the crap out of me. And yet, when you represent one of the best educated districts in America, it turns out even my folks who are Democrats, lean left, they may understand basic demographics that we have a big problem in front of us. And it's not taxing rich people or not, this or that. We live in a time of sort of folklore. It's demographics. We got old as a society. We have lots of earned promises, benefits, and we're having real trouble financing them. And my intense frustration, look, I have 100 hours of floor speeches walking people through both the problem, but then also a series of solutions. So some poor Democrat intern had to sit and watch all these videos and listen to and they try, and you could see the Democrats trying so desperately saying, well, he talked about Social Security here. Yeah, I made the mistake of actually reading the actuarial report that's not Republican or Democrat, it's math. And we have an old family saying at some point the math will win. There are solutions. But every day we wait, look, we're borrowing about $70,000 every second. It gets harder and harder. And you've also seen now interest rates. Okay, let's do a factoid to sort of set the stage. If the United States went back to its normal interest rate on U.S. sovereign debt, about 6%, in 9 years, 45% of all tax receipts, tariffs, income, corporate, everything, 45% would pay just interest. The fragility is the big fancy word that the United States is in because of demographics, 100%, well, almost 100% of debt over the next 10 years before the Social Security Trust Fund is empty is interest and the growth of Medicare. But it's not about cutting things. It's modernizing. If we spend how many billions every year duplicating MRI scans or x-rays or those things, instead of just attaching it to your phone or a portable device. So when you get your x-ray or your MRI in Flagstaff and you come back to Phoenix, it's right there. There's lots of steps like that where you could revolutionize the cost of healthcare. And the service actually gets better, faster, cheaper. And it's shocking the army of lobbyists who do not want to modernize.
Right.
Because modernizing makes them now have to compete, change their business model. But there's a reason you didn't go to Blockbuster Video last weekend. Technology changed.
It would have been fun, though.
But look,
Yeah,
look,
no,
look,
exactly.
Look, I'm sure there's some people that miss using a paper map instead of the mapping program on your phone and this and that. But the reality, everything else around us has been revolutionized by technology and is moving even better, faster. Yeah. Except the government bureaucracy and often the way we deliver services.
No, I have to admit, I bought an Arizona Gazetteer recently, but it's just been sitting in my closet. I haven't opened. I loved that thing back when I used to go on Arizona back roads, and there was not really any GPS back then. But let's talk about the debt. Let's talk about these things. Is this the year? You've got a Republican-controlled House, a Republican-controlled Senate, a Republican-controlled White House. Is this the year when we finally tackle the debt? Or are there enough members of your party who really are not fiscal conservatives and are not interested in this? They just want to keep bringing the bacon home. And name names. No, I'm just kidding.
No, happy to.
You got to work with these people, so.
Okay, first you have your mechanics of 60-vote rule in the Senate.
Right.
That's why much of this, we're going to get a couple big bites at the apple of what they call reconciliation. It's 1974 Budget Control Act that allows you to move certain things with only 51 votes in the Senate. But for many of our brothers and sisters, the first reconciliation they want to do, border protection, immigration policy, fine. There are a series of things we could do as part of that as pay-fors. Because the actual statute, reconciliation is supposed to be used to reduce cost to government.
Okay.
The second one is the nuclear bomb, the big issue, and your taxes, my taxes, every American's taxes are going up at the end of 2025. Mm-hmm. It's already the law. Mm-hmm. No member is going to vote for it. It's already the law. And that's because the part of the reforms that were done in 2017 expire.
Right.
Because you had to do it in a budget box. It gets geeky. Just to fix that, if you fixed everything that's about to go up, that's about $4.6 trillion over 10 years. Just that.
Wow.
Just the individual taxes that are going up would be $3.7 trillion. So now you have the issue of how do you not let individuals, your LLCs, your small businesses, taxes go up and not increase the debt? So now you're going to find $4.6 trillion just to cover that.
Yeah. Or do you not do anything about it? And, it's finally time to start biting the bullet. What I think it's $200,000 per individual taxpayer is what's owed on the debt?
Yeah, it's something like that. There's a combination of things, though. There's certain things you can do in the tax code that maximize investment for productivity. And this is going to be one of the great fights that's coming. And it actually could even be tricky with some of the people around President Trump. President Trump has talked about, a much more productive America. At the same time, there's many people around him that don't like the competition of technology. Mm-hmm. So you already see some of the fights there. And look at some of the discussions on ports and docks and all this. Should you be allowed to use automation and technology to make things move better, faster?
And they're striking the whole thing. Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, there's a path that works. The window is getting much tighter before you start in an interest rate spiral where interest just starts to truly consume your opportunity to revolutionize things. So it's not only here's the things in government that just need to be cut. Here's the things you consolidate. Here's the things you just get rid of. Here's the huge portion of government that needs modernization. Allow technology, allow doing it in a modern fashion. But every time, every one of those things, there's a bureaucracy with a lobbyist or a union that's angry at you.
Yeah.
Or over here is a business that doesn't want to now have to compete. They have their little silo, the way they do it. And sometimes for them, it's cheaper to hire an army of PR firms, run ads on a station like this, attack, then hire lobbyists to slow down. And we went through that actually with telehealth. The only reason you have telehealth today is the pandemic.
Right.
I had it, you may remember, it was one of my first pieces of legislation a decade ago, was to allow you to use technology to talk to your medical professional. And I was never going to get a hearing on it. We updated it, we rewrote it, we were never going to get a hearing because there was an army of lobbyists. They spent millions in this marketplace on television, radio. Schweikert's trying to get between you and your doctor. Pandemic hit, all of a sudden, telehealth becomes the law. And it turns out everyone figured out how to use FaceTime on their phone. And the point is, it forced many of these deliverers to have to change their business model.
Yeah.
But the public loves it. And there's the battle. How do you educate the public that the debt is a crisis? Interest is terrifying. It's not all cut and slash and burn. And I know I'm going too long, but there is one last point that's really important. For our brothers and sisters on the left that run around and say, just tax rich people more. If you and you can find the report on the Manhattan Institute's website. Take all the taxes that have been proposed and scored. It's about 1.5% of GDP that you'd get in new taxes. Take all the cuts that I've talked about, that other Republicans have talked about, we get about 1% of GDP. So a big 2.5. We're going to borrow 7% of the entire economy this year. So all the solutions that the commentators, the people on the radio, the political class talk about are just a fraction of what we have to accomplish.
What I heard a number of years ago was, and this is when the debt was, I think, around 10 trillion or something, was if you took all of the goods, all of the cash, all of the property, all of the factories, everything from every billionaire around the world, it couldn't even pay off a third of the debt.
Oh, it's a fraction. It's even much less than that. And then you have to deal with the actual reality. Okay, what's the if most very, very, very wealthy people, it's in equities, it's in stock.
Yeah. Yeah.
You start to strip it from what's the value of the stock, what also happened to everyone's pension,
Right.
their retirement accounts, those things.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean there's not base broadening that has to be dealt with in the tax code. There's a couple gimmicks in the tax code that are exploited by people with lots of lawyers. Mm-hmm. Okay, we belong taking care of those. But the reality of the demographics and the political class, I have members of Congress who are Republican who are perpetually angry with me because I do these presentations walking through the math.
Yeah.
And they get up in front of their audience and says, if we do, get rid of waste and fraud and the border and we'll be fine. None of that's true. And there's the problem, is not understanding the scale and the actual driver of debt.
I think a lot of people at one point were thinking if we just did away with welfare, we can fix this problem. That's a scratch on the surface. And that's not to say that welfare, reform didn't need to happen and all these other things, but it's such a huge problem. So I guess what I'm getting at is I found everything you said interesting. So that's not...
Well, that's a rarity.
No, come on. No, I really do, because I didn't know half of it. But here's the other thing. I think the answer to my question is, will a Republican House and Senate and White House be able to deal with the debt in any kind of real way in 2025? I think the answer is no.
Look, I'm optimistic, but we need the public. This is no longer screaming and yelling that you're angry about something. Demonstrate to your elected officials, pick up the phone, send them a text, engage with them on social media, but demonstrate you actually know some of your facts. Don't make crap up. And that you are willing to push them and embrace modernizing, cuts, revamping. You understand it's necessary. Because what will shock you is back in D.C., the actual conversations about debt and deficit are often second or third degree. People are now talking about, well, we have a crisis in agricultural America. We need more money. We had the disasters. We need more money. Okay, those are all things you need to deal with. But those are sort of one time. Now, how do you fix the window in a country where, if you look at Census Bureau data, from 11 years to maybe 16 years, the United States will start having more deaths than births. 17 states last year had more deaths than births. And no one likes to deal with the fact of our demographics and the actual math. And then they get angry saying, well, how do you keep an economy actually growing productivity? You're going to have to use technology. You're going to have to do labor substitution.
Too.
But it has to be, what we find is if you are going to deal with the immigration system, skills-based, talent-based, you actually gain tax receipts and economic growth.
Sure.
You actually hurt the working poor with what's gone on at the border the last 4 years.
Oh, sure. No,
so you crush their wages. You know, they're having, when someone sells their labor, now you have to compete against millions of other people selling the same skill set. So I always get angry when you have, annoyed when you have these people, that talk about immigration or border security and not understand their math. And to his credit, President Trump has actually talked about it's insane we educate people and then send them home to compete with us.
Right, right.
So we need that productivity curve, because what that does is raise everyone's wages and how we live.
Yeah.
And if you're going to make up for the crushing that inflation has done to us, you need to flatten inflation and you need to move productivity so our wages grow, so we start to catch back up with what our purchasing power should be.
We're just about out of time. Not that we can go 3 hours, except for poor Ed behind the camera over here.
The terrifying thing is,
he's got a life.
If you told me that, I would have brought my charts. I hold the congressional record for the most charts ever used. Yep.
Oh, and you're proud of that. I like that about you. He's proud of that. What is something that most people don't know about David Schweikert? What is something now that you can reveal? The election's behind you. You can say, I collect, Batman cards or...
silly things like my little girl who just turned 9. We spent like the last 3 days up on the Navajo reservation. I sent you a photo. And in our time up there, because I'm actually a fairly good plumber, we were fixing people's plumbing and doing trying to understand some of the water issues up there, and some of the infrastructure issues, which it's remarkably more complex than people understand because of the population densities and deliverability and what's happened to the groundwater table.
So you're a part-time plumber.
Yeah, I'm a part-time plumber. Welding is my hobby.
Nowhere near Watergate, by the way.
Well, welding is my hobby because I married the baby
or gas.
Oh, I have everything.
You've got everything.
I even have 220 plugs situated around my house so I can plug in for. And part of that was
you're a welder anywhere in your house. How does your wife feel about that?
Oh, it was a requirement to marry her. No, seriously. My wife is the baby of 10.
Uh-huh.
And look, she grew up on a very poor farm, and all the boys are all welders, either professionally or it's their hobby.
Yeah.
And it almost became like this shtick where I wasn't allowed to marry her until they came out, hung out here in Arizona, and taught me to weld.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
it was like a family marriage contract deal.
That's funny. You got to respect that. By the way, my stepdad, the guy I called dad, that was one of the things my stepsister and I had to figure out is when we cleaned out his house, whatever it was, 4 years ago, what are we going to do with a Lincoln welder?
Ooh.
3 drill presses, a lathe. I mean, he was a machinist. He had a complete machine shop.
Do you still have some?
No.
Darn it.
It was basically, if you can back your truck up and take it away, it's yours. One of those deals. But no, I love welding. It's really
my
cool.
wife accuses me of having a tool fetish.
Yeah, well,
I own, as we joke often in our family. But part of it is when you have a job where you do this, or you sit in front of numbers all day. On my drive over here, we were having a discussion with, I'll be chairing the Joint Economic Committee. Mm-hmm. So I have like 5 PhD economists, and we were having an actual discussion of the financing of Medicare Advantage. And the Wall Street Journal series that has been just remarkable on how much fraud there is. Mm-hmm. And what could we do as economists to reorganize this? You do that all day long. You come home, you want to get dirty. You want to build things. Like when I leave here, I'm actually going home to chase a short wire in a conduit that's within a wall. And that's joyful because you need, if you live just in the political world, it will rot your brain.
And your soul, right?
All right. Let's say, I know we're going over time.
No.
What's the greatest sin of someone that's elected?
What?
I actually believe it's vanity.
But that's your job.
No.
It's to get people to like you.
No, actually, your job is to do your job. And look, I say things that make people upset with me. But I want them to understand at least my facts were correct. And I don't do it to be mean. I'm doing it because I'm looking how to fix things. And maybe I'm blessed. Maybe Arizona, maybe this district is one of the few places in America where you don't have to make crap up to get elected. You can be brutally honest. And, so far it's working. I have sometimes weird polling of people who say, okay, he's not warm and fuzzy enough, but I think he does his job well. Maybe that's
there you go.
Maybe that's the reward.
Yeah. No. And by the way, you can't upset me with anything you say, other than if I call you up and go, I have got a little trouble with this one toilet, and you say no, and then
you upset. Laugh. It happens more because a lot of my neighbors are older, and I'll fix things. But you and I have known each other a very long time. We should probably disclose that.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And hopefully I've tried to be sort of intellectually consistent.
Yeah.
That
I would say so.
It's the job. It's not the vanity. Do your very best to do it well. And if you get something wrong, fix it. I've had occasions where I've absolutely screwed up. Are things I thought I knew were true. And admit it, fix it, and work harder.
All right. And bring a plunger.
And I actually have the whole motorized rotor system.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Oh, my gosh. All right. Thank you so much, Congressman. Always great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. And thank you for watching the AZ Political Podcast. We'll see you really soon.
Thanks for watching the AZ Political Podcast with Jim Sharpe. Click the box to watch more from KTAR News and tap the button in the middle to subscribe.